More important than this video or the presentation are your questions. So I would rather not get through the PowerPoint but answer your questions. I'd rather tell you what you want to know than me telling you what I think you want to know. At the end of my presentation, we're going to have a question and answer section. And what we'll do is we'll go over anything that you have about any questions across the board, the new texting laws, law enforcement's response to anything that you want to talk about, medical marijuana, traffic enforcement in general, and the things we see. So with that said, before I begin that, I just want to say thank you for your time. I've been a police officer for 22 years. I've spent almost my entire career in DUI and traffic enforcement. And I appreciate you allowing me to speak about something I'm so passionate about, because this is what I've done my whole career. I've always enjoyed it. The question is, why do we do traffic enforcement with police officers? It saves lives. It just does. If we have a stretch of road that has a bunch of crashes, Okeechobee Military Trail, we saturate that road with a bunch of police officers, the next month the crashes are way down. Because everybody that received a citation or warning, and everybody that saw that person getting pulled over, they all tell their friends. And when they tell their friends, everybody's on the lookout for that police officer. So instead of doing 20 miles over the speed limit and not paying attention to driving, they're maybe only doing 10 over, and they're actually looking for that police officer because they don't want to get pulled over. But in the process of doing that, what are they doing? They're doing what they should have done. They're paying attention to the roadway, and the crashes go way down. The other thing is that it responds to the needs of the public. Most importantly, if you have children and somebody ever speeds down your neighborhood street, you're going to get upset really, really quick, especially if you have a small child. One of the number one complaints we get as police officers are people speeding in my neighborhood. But the most important thing that nobody really knows unless you're in law enforcement is it catches real criminals. And when I say that, 90% of the people that we stop and pull over are good people. The only time a good person ever meets a police officer is a traffic stop. That's it. And we know that. 90% of you are good, hardworking people, but there's that 10% that are hardened criminals. Everybody know who this is? Okay, who is he? That's right, Timothy McVeigh. He was one of the worst domestic terrorists in history. And he was ultimately caught by a state trooper that pulled him over because he didn't have a tag on his motor vehicle. Again, a simple, non-moving violation caught a horrific domestic terrorist. Everybody knows him? Okay. One of the worst serial killers, Ted Bundy. He was ultimately caught because a Pensacola police officer stopped him for no headlights. So think about that. A non-moving violation apprehended one of the worst serial killers. We'll never truly know how many people he killed. But again, it all started with just a little traffic stop. This goes far back. Does anybody know who this is?
Son of Sam.
The son of Sam, David Berkowitz. You're correct. Not a lot of people know this unless you were into history, you lived during that time, or you saw the movie. He was ultimately caught at the scene of his last incident where he tried to kill somebody. They didn't get the tag number when he fled on his car, but what they did notice, there were parking tickets on the windshield. And that's what gave the detectives the break they needed to actually catch him. Is that 2 New York City police officers cutting parking tickets on the side of the road. That's what actually caught the Son of Sam killer. A little bit about the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office DUI unit. We have 3 corporals, a sergeant, and we have 5 investigators in the field. We currently, Palm Beach County, the census says about 1.4 million people in our county. Truthfully, we're almost close to 2 million people. The Sheriff's Office, we provide police services to approximately 48% of the county. And our DUI unit was responsible last year for approximately 675 DUI arrests. Just those deputies right there. But it's not just about writing tickets and making arrests. We actually go out to the public. We try to do educational initiatives. We have a table set up, and what we're using is the fatal vision goggles. And some of you are educators, you know about these, you use them, they're a great tool. We go out to colleges, we go out to safety fairs, we try to educate the public. If we can meet somebody there instead of on the side of the road, we prefer. Because no matter what happens, this truly is, unfortunately, a recession-proof industry. We're always going to be busy. So if we can stop some of the workload through education, we're all about it. As instructors, is everybody in this room pretty much a driving instructor? Okay. You're the first line of defense, and when you're teaching to your students, you've got to sell it. Just like whenever I teach a new hire class, I've got to sell the product. The product is safety, and you got to use every tool you possibly can. Now, these people never get the recognition that they deserve. This is the breath alcohol testing unit. At the Sheriff's Office, we use civilians that do breath testing. And that unit is responsible for 90% of the breath testing in our county for DUI enforcement. And to put it in perspective, that small unit provides breath testing for over 2,000 people a year. All PBSO sheriff's deputies, all 1,500 of us plus, 90% of the state troopers and 90% of the city police officers come to our back. They do the breath testing, they put up with some of the people that are inebriated, that act very poorly when they've been arrested. It's a very tough job, and it's very important what they do, because their breath readings ultimately have a big part of whether or not that person's found guilty in court. And I think some of you, the BAT bus, is it still out there? Was it out there before? Okay, the breath alcohol testing bus is an excellent tool. We try to put it out on weekends when staffing allows. So instead of having to take somebody to the main county jail, if they're on the south end, the west end, or the north end of the county, we try to have that on patrol, and they can actually come in there, there's an intoxilizer in there, and they have them take a breath test. Then once that person has had a breath test done, we'll book them into the county jail. Now, this video I'm about to show you, I'm not going to lie to you, it's incredibly graphic. If a graphic video is going to bother anybody in the room, now would definitely be the time to leave. Okay.
Could you live with the shame from daily?
Two, three, four, five. 1, 2, 3. You should get a little run. Look, make a bit of run.
Are you the driver of the vehicle, sir?
No pulse, no response.
Just a quick one.
Clear.
I thought I'd be okay.
Stand clear. Starting off. Stand
Should be
clear.
I'm doing the listening test.
Still no pulse. Still no response. People not reacting. Still nothing. The patient is now also swallowed.
I didn't mean it.
My name is Jacqueline Sabrina. This is a picture of me before I was hit by a drunk driver, before the car caught fire, before 2 of my friends died, before I needed more than 40 operations. This is me when my life was just like anyone else in college. This is me after being hit by a drunk driver.
Now, those videos were dated, but they were horrific. Would you agree? Can anybody tell from where they were from? What part, what country? Correct. The thing that, exactly, they were from United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. And the most frustrating part for me, after being a police officer for 22 years, is I can't find a public service announcement that's that honest or effective in our country. And the truth of the matter is, it really is like that. In the last 22 years, I've seen some horrific crashes, and that really does occur on a regular basis. Now, Statistics, I do stat reports for my agency. Statistics, we all know, it can be looked at many ways, but last year, 2019, 3,188 traffic fatalities. In Palm Beach County, with every agency reporting thus far, we're at 167. In our county, approximately 40% of our fatalities, they're DUI related, alcohol, drugs, or a combination of both. So you have to ask your question, if there wasn't alcohol at play, would 40% of those fatalities still occur? I mean, we can't quantify it for sure, but if one person didn't die, everybody's somebody's child. Can you understand that? Everybody who has a child knows that's your child. If one person didn't die senselessly, it's the world, especially if it's your child. And that's one thing you can bring home to your students. It's kind of tough because they're not parents yet usually. They don't know yet, but that's huge, every life. Tiger Woods was arrested by the Jupiter Police Department. He went to the breath alcohol testing facility where I calibrate the breathalyzers. He was highly impaired on pain medication and he blew triple zeros. And Tiger Woods, I'm telling you right now, I watched all of his videos. He was a gentleman. He was a good person. He did everything he was supposed to do, but he just made a bad decision. He really did. He did everything he was supposed to do. He went through his rehab, and now he's back on the circuit. But he was a good person that made a bad decision. And it's absolutely anybody. A DUI driver, it's me, it's you, it's any one of us to get behind the wheel. It is a crime that unfortunately is very socially acceptable in our country. And that's sad, but it's true. One thing they never talk about a lot, but maybe more so for you, is it predominantly adults you teach, or is it predominantly under 21?
Under 21.
Okay. If you have any questions about this law and how it's in, please raise your hand. Obviously in the state of Florida, you can have no alcohol in your system if you're under 21. The legal limit is 0.02 if you're under 21. And the way that works in the real world is if I was a police officer that stopped an under 21 driver, I would screen them for DUI. And if I thought they were driving under the influence, I would arrest them for the true criminal DUI, the 316-193. But if I did not feel I had probable cause to arrest them for DUI, but I knew there was alcohol on board, I would request a breath test. And if they did not submit to the breath test, the penalties are very similar administratively. They'll lose their license for 12 months for the first refusal and 18 months for the second. But there's no criminal charge, it's just administrative. Does anybody have any question how it differs from a criminal DUI? Now, we try to use videos from our agency because we don't want to show a video where somebody, a relative of someone that was hurt or injured, could possibly be in the audience. This is a police officer, his name's Gregory Lynch. He works at the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office DUI unit, and he's on patrol looking for a DUI driver. He's heading eastbound on Okeechobee Boulevard, and he just came over the turnpike. So if you're familiar with Palm Beach County, he's in central Palm Beach County, and he's on patrol, and he's a member of our DUI unit. Like I said, he's looking for a DUI driver, and he just found one. Yes. So he almost has a head-on collision. Look at the vehicle right here. It goes off camera for a second. Right up against the street center.
Yeah.
He knew what time of day it was. He truly did.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So you said he was looking for a drunk driver, so was he just patrolling and watching what was coming, or was it reported there's a drunk driver and he was looking for
He was on routine patrol, from what I understand. Again, our DUI unit goes on duty. They will take DUIs from other police officers, but they also go out on patrol. They're not firemen. They don't wait at the fire station. They don't wait to get called out. They'll actually go out, they write traffic tickets, they aggressively patrol, because they want to get them before they get you, for lack of a better word. Yes, sir.
As it becomes more acceptable to smoke weed in society, are you finding that you're pulling people over who are just as impaired from that as from alcohol?
When I started 22 years ago, the majority of DUI arrests were predominantly alcohol related. Now, approximately more than half have something else on board. And we're seeing more and more triple zeros. They're highly impaired. When we put them through the roadside sobriety tasks, they are definitely under the influence. They're impaired. They should not be driving because they're not impaired on alcohol. They're impaired on drugs. And unfortunately, due to the current things that have happened, marijuana usage is absolutely on the rise. It truly is. And it does complicate the situation for a number of reasons. I'll get back to that a little bit, but essentially, Right now, does anybody know what the legal limit is in the state of Florida for criminal DUI? What's that?
0.08.
Point what? Which one?
0.08. 0.0.
Extra 0.0.
Okay, 0.08.
Yeah.
Okay. Trying to think. Right now, there is absolutely no per se, that's called the per se legal limit, which means if you get arrested and you go over 0.08, you're considered impaired in the state of Florida. The problem is with marijuana is there is no per se legal limit. There's no limit that says 5 nanograms of THC, 10 nanograms of THC. Even if we arrest you and you blow triple zeros and you provide a urine sample and we test and we find urine, we find THC, there's no way to quantify it. We can't say at this level you're impaired. Also, there's no non-invasive testing for marijuana. We have a breathalyzer that we test for alcohol because it's non-invasive. Urine and blood are both invasive. So essentially what's happened right now is it's 1933, we're going to make alcohol legal, but there's no such thing as a breathalyzer for alcohol, there's no such thing as a per se legal limit. We would say that is a bad idea, correct? That's essentially what is happening in our state with marijuana, medical marijuana, and these dispensaries. We have no per se legal limit and we have no non-invasive testing. And I'm going to get back to that in a minute too, there's another slide for that. But I didn't want to gloss over and forget your question. Okay, this is the same police officer, investigator Gregory Lynch. He's in rural Palm Beach County, he's in Jupiter Farms, and he's on one of these unlit dirt road, actually not a dirt road, a paved road that abuts to dirt roads. It's very dark out there, and right now his camera is on night vision mode. And at the last possible second, he realizes this person's in his lane. Again, incredibly lucky. If he's only doing 40 and the other car is doing 40, that would be a head-on, that'd be like hitting a wall at 80 miles per hour. And again, incredibly lucky. Did not get hurt. Yes, sir. Okay. Although this may not make sense to everybody else in the room, yes, that is the gentleman who pulled you over last
He
night.
got a ticket last.
No, I'm not gonna take it. I'm not gonna take it.
And he received a written warning.
On John Road.
All right, again, the same police officer, investigator Gregory Lynch. He's on Gun Club Road, heading westbound, coming up to Haverhill Road. He just left the jail after arresting somebody for DUI. He comes to a stop at the red light. There's a turn lane here. These are all westbound lanes, right here.
Oh my God.
Absolutely.
That's amazing. How does he miss it?
He's like looking for
Like, what kind of day was this?
He's out.
He's trying to get over the I can't have a phone.
I like the country music.
That's my gross. He's got friends in low places.
And that gentleman was ultimately arrested for driving in the ambulance. Here's what happens when a police officer is not lucky. And I'm going to have that police officer come up and speak to us. I wanted to introduce you to Detective Chiquita Rodriguez of the Violent Crimes Division.
Good afternoon, everybody. As he said, I currently work at the Sheriff's Office. I'm a detective. I'm in the Violent Crimes Division. On the morning of December 11, 2018, I had been an investigator with the DUI Enforcement Unit. I had the honor and privilege to be in that unit for 3 years. Enjoyed it very, very much. Worked with an excellent group of gentlemen in that unit. I had just finished working my shift. It was the wee early morning hours. It was just shy of 4 o'clock in the morning. I was on my way home. It was my last day of my work week. And I was just sitting at a traffic light, at a red light like anybody else, minding my business, just trying to get home. Maybe that was my mistake, you know. I just was, mentally, I was just trying to get home. Luckily for me, there was another one of my partners that works in the unit with me that was also on his way home, so we were stuck at the same exact traffic light. He was gonna make a left-hand turn to go to his residence, and I was gonna proceed through the intersection. I'm gonna be very honest with you, to this day, this accident happened a little bit over a year ago. I do not remember the crash. I can only recall the facts that people have given me from the crash. Like I said, I was very fortunate to have a coworker right next to me who got the crash called out through dispatch and was able to render aid to me because I was rendered unconscious at the scene. I didn't regain consciousness. I woke up at St. Mary's, and the last thing I remember was I was on the phone with this particular partner of mine from work. We were trying to decide whether we were going to go to a substation to upload our videos at the end of our shift, or if we were going to do it at a later time, because it was the end of our shift, and like I said, we had just worked an overnight shift. And the last thing I remember was being on the phone with him. So there's nothing scarier than waking up in the hospital and you don't even know how you got there. I mean, you remember laughing and being on the phone. I've learned a lot from this crash. I'm very thankful that I'm not a statistic. I'm not one of the numbers that was tallied up there as a fatality. As you see me right now is pretty much how I walked away from the crash. I had nothing but a concussion and some really, really bad bruises. I was very, very fortunate that night. But what you guys need to be aware of is that there are impaired drivers who share the roadway with us every minute of every day. That is when you're picking up your kids from school, that is when you're going to the grocery store, when you're taking your commute to work, and when you're driving to church. Just be aware of your surroundings. Unfortunately, we can't control that these people are sharing the roadways with us. This particular night, it was a night like any other. I just didn't pay attention, and I had no reason to. I was sitting at a light. I was just patiently waiting for that light to change so I can proceed through the intersection. He hit me from the rear. As you can tell, he had a pretty big pickup truck. Subsequently, when he hit me, I hit a vehicle that was next to me as well. Fortunately, nothing happened to that driver. And the driver of the vehicle that hit my vehicle, as you can tell, I was on duty in a work truck, so it had the decals, it had the markings and everything. He was 3 times over the legal limit. He was a .244 at just shy of 4 in the morning, so he had been drinking quite a bit that night, and so he was 3 times over the legal limit. Whether he fell asleep, wandered off the roadway, got distracted, it's just, I just became the victim of somebody else's really, really bad, poor decision. Because he could have chosen to get a designated driver that night. He had many options. He had Uber, he had Lyft. Unfortunately, a lot of us, our pride gets in the way, and we all think that we're okay. So don't ever be too proud to say, hey, listen, I've had one too many. Don't ever take that chance, because you could create a statistic. You could take somebody's life, and it's not worth it. And just like the videos say, can you live with that for the rest of your life? Can you live with that chance? So just think twice about it. And thank you all.
Detective Shakira Rodriguez was very kind to her. She took time off of her shift to come here for this. Again, it's something that could happen to any one of us. If it can happen to us, it could definitely happen to you. And that's what we want to bring home is it really does happen every single day. People are right now, as we speak, 2 o'clock this afternoon, are driving under the influence. Alcohol, drugs, prescription medications, a mixture of all 3. It's out there. As police officers, we're given training in the academy, and there's extra training schools we can take. But basically the 3 things you look for: vehicle in motion, making contact with the person, and then ultimately when we do roadsides, which is our pre-arrest screening. Legal limit state of Florida, as I previously said, is .08. It's .02 for the administrative suspension. Does anybody in this room happen to know what the legal limit is for commercial motor vehicle truck operators? Does anybody know the answer to that?
0.
0.04. 0.04 for them. Again, that's an administrative suspension, not criminal. This is just a quick overview. Different types of alcohol. The most common alcohol that we ingest is ethanol alcohol. It's what you find in, beer, wine, hard spirits, but there are other alcohols. Isopropyl, rubbing alcohol, which you can drink. Wood grain, methanol alcohol. But the thing that you need to let people know is they're incredibly toxic to your system, and the lethal level for isopropyl and methanol alcohol is much lower. At a 0.6, you're approaching the lethal dose for ethanol alcohol. It's much lower for these other types of alcohol. But hardcore alcoholics, homeless people, they will drink wood alcohol and isopropyl alcohol. A little bit about how alcohol interacts with your body. Have you ever noticed if you had one drink before dinner, you felt the alcohol immediately? The reason for that is very simple. 20% of a dose of alcohol is absorbed in your stomach. The other 80% is in your intestines, but in between your intestines and your stomach is a little valve. That valve is called the pyloric valve. And the way it works is very simple. If you drink water, that valve senses water, it goes all the way through your system. But if you eat a hamburger or something solid, your stomach senses that, and it stops that valve, so the stomach acids can liquefy the hamburger. And then once it senses liquid, it's going to release that valve, and then the hamburger will go down to your intestines where you can get the nutrition from the food. When you drink on an empty stomach, though, it's just liquid. So your body releases it through your entire system. You get 100% absorption of alcohol into your system quicker. So that's why when you're on an empty stomach, you're actually going to feel the effects of alcohol much quicker. If you eat something before you start drinking alcohol, it slows down the process and gives your body a chance to metabolize the alcohol out, where you don't feel that euphoric effect, buzz feeling, etc. Just a little bit about how alcohol affects you. Ultimately, alcohol is a water-loving molecule, and it penetrates the blood-brain barrier. That's how it eventually impairs you, to where your fine motor skills, your judgment, all of that get impaired. 95% of your alcohol is metabolized out of your body. Eventually, it turns into carbon dioxide, water, but 5% is going to leave your body in an unchanged state. It's going to come out of your tears, your sweat, your breath, and your urine. And that's why we do breath testing as the primary source for alcohol, is because it leaves your body in an unchanged state. So we can test it. So if you blow into an intoxilizer, which is the breath testing instrument we use at the sheriff's office, that's going to be indicative of the alcohol concentration in your body. Any questions about how that works? Again, legal limit is a .08. Does anybody remember when it was a .10? Many years ago, the legal limit was a .10. The true number, the number it really honestly should be, is a .04, .05. The American Medical Association says that you're impaired at a .04 to a .05. It's a medical fact. Not a cop, not a state attorney. Medical doctors will tell you you're impaired at .04, .05. Only one state in America has dropped it to the .05, which is what it should be. Does anybody know? Utah. Utah dropped the legal limit to .05. Unfortunately, the reason why we can't get a .05, it's recommended, but unfortunately, the reason why we can't get the .05 legal limit is very simple. The beverage industry has a very strong lobby. They do. Anheuser-Busch, the different manufacturers of alcohol. I want to throw this out there right now. One drink, 2 drinks is not going to put you at a .04, .05. I have literally dosed myself and other people with alcohol and tested myself on an instrument that tests alcohol. It takes several drinks, sustained drinks over time. And unless you're an alcoholic, if I dosed you up to a .04, .05, you would feel the euphoric effects of alcohol. You would say to yourself, I don't feel good driving. You will not feel comfortable driving well below the .08 legal limit. So when somebody tells you, I only got arrested, I was at .081, they were really up there. Most people, unless they're an alcoholic, at a .08, they are incredibly impaired. They're sloppy, they're slurry. The people who aren't, alcoholics. Again, things we look for: slurred speech, glassy, watery, bloodshot eyes, unsteady on your feet. The things you would think of with Otis the town drunk. Disorientated, dazed. Now, the most important thing I want you to understand is once you've reached the level of impairment, you're over the legal limit, you're .10, .12, .08, the only thing that's going to make you sober is time. Your body will metabolize alcohol out at approximately 0.015% per hour. So if you, after a heavy night of drinking, go out and you get a big greasy meal, you're not going to be sober, you're just going to be a very well-fed drunk. If you drink a bunch of cups of coffee and you're under the influence, you're not going to be sober, you're just going to be a very alert drunk. But that's it. The only thing that's going to make you sober is time. Now, I talked to you about the .05 legal limit. In Western Europe, which is where most of us come from, with the exception of England, every country has a .05 legal limit or lower. So think about that. We have countries with sustained histories of alcohol production. Germany, beer; France, wine. All of these countries know that the legal limit should be at a .05. The only holdout is, our mother country would be England. But the truth of the matter is that's where it actually should be. And that's not me, that's the American Medical Association. Again, vehicle in motion, things we look for: erratic driving, wide turn, striking their left and right lane markers, weaving, driving 35 miles an hour in a posted 65, things like that. Now, for driving instructors, I really want to get this slide for you. Does the police officer, when he stops you just for a traffic violation, can he order you out of your car? Who says they cannot? Who says they can? Correct. The courts have ruled that a police officer can order you in or out of your car based upon their necessity. Now, I tell people this because I don't like people that they want to have a confrontation with a police officer on the side of the road. If you feel unhappy about the way you were treated by a police officer, the sheriff of Palm Beach County, his very simple instructions are: comply on the side of the road, but then make a complaint. Every marked patrol car in the sheriff's office has a video camera. So if you go to make a complaint against a deputy sheriff, there will be a video there with audio. There will be a non-biased third-party witness. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to have an altercation or an argument with a police officer on the side of the road, because that's just not going to be a good scene. It's just not. So police officers do have the right to order the driver and the passengers in and out of the car based upon operational necessity. And you're asking me why? Just think about common sense. If you have a car, you're by yourself, you have a car with 4 or 5 people in it, the driver stays, but the passengers walk away from the car. Could they come behind you? It comes to kind of a tactical situation. You have to control the situation. Because at the end of the day, remember one thing about, as a police officer, you know who we are because of the clothes we're wearing and the car we're driving. We have no idea who we pulled over. We know in our heart that 90 to 95% of the people we pull over are good people. We know that. But we just can't tell who a criminal is. A criminal could be anybody. There's not any specific group of criminal. Anybody can be a criminal. We just don't know who we're dealing with when we pull you over. So understand that. Again, personal contact, glassy, watery, bloodshot eyes. Unfortunately, smell of alcohol, but unfortunately the smell of marijuana is becoming more and more prevalent in cars, we've noticed. Unfortunately, we have quite a few dispensaries in our county. And slurred speech, people that they've been drinking. And we have people step out of the car. We ask them, have you had any medical, have you been to a doctor, dentist, are you taking any prescription medications, things of that nature. And then we'll do what's called roadside sobriety tasks, where we actually test people.
Excuse me?
Yes.
Before you get to the test, can I go back and ask you about the traffic stop from your perspective, please?
Mm-hmm.
We currently have,
Thank you.
when we talk about traffic stops, one of the things we ask them to do is explain the situation from the officer's perspective. If you were advising us on answers to listen for, to look for from our students, to answer that question, what's the situation feel like from an officer's perspective? Can you give us a couple talking points on what you...
To make things go smoothly on a traffic stop?
No, we ask that also, what they need to do. But we also ask them to take the perspective of the officer.
Yes.
If you're the officer, how does that feel? What are you going into thinking about that drive?
When you pull over a car, first of all, windows in. Dark window tints, it's a stressor. I have no idea when you get 1%, 2%, 5% window tint. I can't see inside the car. At night, forget about it. Things like window tint, we think about it, we can't see inside the car. People rummaging around the vehicle. 90% of the time, they're just trying to get their documents that they know they're ultimately going to have to give us, registration insurance. Unfortunately, we just don't know who those 5 to 10% are. So a lot of things go through our mind, but what we're looking for the most part when you pull somebody over, be compliant, don't do anything erratic that's going to raise our apprehension as well. So you're asking how we feel about it?
Right, we're asking the student to think about the person.
Absolutely.
Interact.
And that's just good sense in everything in life. Whenever you're dealing with somebody, especially in a situation that's a little stressful, put yourself in the other person's perspective and how to deal with it. Because whenever I've been stopped by a state trooper, I always put myself in that person's perspective. What is he worried about? What is he looking for? I try to have all my documents ready, things of that nature. But always try to be very professional. No matter how you feel about the situation, there's a saying that goes for traffic stops that always works for everybody: the violator and the police officer. The loudest person in the room is the weakest person in the room. Meaning, the louder you are, the more emotional you're getting, the less you're thinking. So I try to tell everybody, keep your calm. When I talk to newer police officers, keep your calm. Don't monologue like a supervillain. If you're going to write a ticket, write a ticket. If you're going to give a warning, give a warning. but don't give a lecture and a ticket. Just do one or the other. Okay? To lecture somebody and give them a ticket would be a bit insulting. The ticket is the lecture. Just be polite if you're going to write a ticket. If you're going to issue a warning and lecture them. That's the way I try to tell other people to do it. Did I answer that question okay?
Yeah, can you say it again, the louder the...
The loudest person in the room is usually the weakest person in the room. And everything else.
That's a great line, Jason.
Now, horizontal gaze nystagmus, again, this is investigator Gregory Lynch. And he's doing the horizontal gaze nystagmus. He's checking the person's eyes to see if you ingest a large amount of alcohol, you'll have what's called horizontal gaze nystagmus, which is the involuntary jerking of your eye muscles. Your eyes are going to be smooth like marbles on glass, tracking the stimulus. But when you drink alcohol, they become choppy. They start jerking from side to side when you get to maximum deviation.
Can you see this?
Now, the horizontal gaze nystagmus task, that's the first task, but sometimes we can't get through situations like that. In this particular situation, we had to discontinue roadsides because obviously he was a danger to himself. Any questions about horizontal gaze nystagmus? Now, there's a lot about that. But essentially what happens is, the reason why your eyes jerk is called positional alcohol nystagmus. What that means is when you drink alcohol and you're on your way up, the alcohol concentration in your bloodstream is greater than the clear fluid in your inner ear. So instead of your eyes tracking smoothly, they're going to jerk. When you get to maximum deviation, they're going to start tweaking. So if you have a couple drinks and you're at your residence, take a stimulus to your friend, they've been drinking, hold it approximately 9 to 12 inches from their nose, and then go from side to side and hold it when you get to maximum deviation. If they drink alcohol to the point where they're impaired, you're going to start noticing they're going to jerk. Do it before you start drinking and after. That's the reason why we're doing that eye task, is we're checking for that involuntary jerking of the HDN task. We check for the involuntary jerking of the eye muscle. And it's it is the most accurate task that we have. Okay, she was northbound on 95. I was at the end of my shift. And she passed me doing 102 miles an hour by Donald Ross on 95.
Three glasses of wine? Okay. Did you have anything else? No. You're not taking any medications? No. Are you healthy? No. Okay. Well, man, I'm a little concerned, like I said, about your ability to drive a motor vehicle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a couple of tasks to make sure you're okay to drive. Yeah. You can do, I want you to do your absolute best on these tasks. You can do these tasks in your current shoes, you can do them barefoot. What would you do? I'm going to explain this to you, but I want you to do your best. The first thing I'd like you to do is I'd like you to stand right here, Ann. Okay. I'd like you to put your left foot on the line, right there. On the line. Okay. And put your right foot in front of your left foot with your right heel touching the tip of your left toe and your hands at your side. Now, like I said, you can do this barefoot or with your sandals on, whichever way that you feel most comfortable with, but I want you to do your absolute best, okay? Now, from that starting position, what I'm going to have you do is stay there. If for some reason you lose your balance, I want you to get right back in that position and just listen to my instructions, okay? Now, don't begin yet, but what I would like you to do, please don't be nervous.
Okay, so things we're looking for is when we put them in that instructional phase, if they can't keep their balance,
we just want to make sure you're okay.
if they step off, which she has, that's a cue of impairment that we look
Your
for.
right foot touching the tip of your left toe. Perfect, there you go. Okay, now what I want you to do, well, don't begin yet, but when I tell you to, I'm going to have you take 9 heel-to-toe steps like so. 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. While you're walking, you're going to be touching heel to toe, keeping your hands at your sides, looking down at your feet, counting each step out loud. You're going to take 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 9. And when you stop, when you get to your 9th step, you're going to stop, and then you're going to turn completely around with a series of small steps, and then take another 9 heel-to-toe steps back. Don't be in that, man, just, I didn't.
Okay, so let's look at things like starting too soon.
There's no pass or fail.
We take it so long, though. So we do it.
Do you understand me, Ron? You understand it as well? You can count well, understand numbers? Okay, just want to make sure. Okay, now put your left foot on the line, right foot in front of your left foot with your right heel touching the tip of your left toe, hands at your side. Now, like I said, I'm going to give you a recap of what we just talked about. You're going to do 9 heel to toe, touching heel to toe, keeping your hands at your side. We're counting each step out loud. When you get to your final step, you're going to stop, turn slowly around, and put it around with your small steps, and then you do the 9 heel to toe steps back the way you came. Do you have any questions about what I'd like you to do? Take some deep breaths and whenever get back and wherever you feel comfortable, begin. Okay. All right. Do you have any questions? Yeah. Okay. Please begin wherever you feel comfortable. All right, man. Can you stand right here for 1 second? Just 1 second, right?
Okay, now that's somebody that was not very sloppy. What do you think? Just based upon that one task, under the influence or not under the influence? Just a quick show of hands, who says not? Okay, who says is under the influence? Okay. She blew a .231. She was almost 3 times the legal limit. She was a functional alcoholic. Now, the reason why I show you that video is you saw the person that fell down during the horizontal gaze nystagmus. There's a big difference between impairment and intoxication. Both are dangerous. She was impaired, but she didn't fit that mind of an intoxicated person that was falling down. She was skinny, she was in shape, and she's a functional alcoholic. But her judgment was impaired, her balance was impaired. She went right by a police officer. I wasn't hiding. At 102 miles an hour. Then we also make the decision, make an arrest, don't make an arrest. If you make the arrest, then you go to the breath alcohol testing facility.
Keep right there. Okay? Okay. Gonna take your bare foot out of your wall.
I vote he's in there.
I think there'd be no disagreement on that. Again, this is actually what, in the state of Florida, this is the Intoxilizer 8000. This is the breath testing instrument that I actually inspect on a monthly basis. Incredibly accurate instrument, beyond reproach. Talks about the penalties: 1 year suspension for your first refusal, 18 months for your second for a breath test. And if it's your second refusal, you're going to be charged with a second-degree misdemeanor crime in our state. Who knows who this person is? Anybody? That is the polo guy. That is Mr. Goodman. Now, it just so happens, 2 of the investigators on his case are here with us today. They're 2 of the best female homicide investigators at the sheriff's office, and in no small part because of their efforts, he was found guilty twice in 2 separate trials. Now, Mr. Goodman, from talking to the investigators on the case, which I was not involved in, they said he was a good guy, but he made a bad decision. He was a Wellington polo guy. He was worth over $400 million. And the people that are going to be on the panel, especially Investigator Snowgrove, you can ask him specific questions about what occurred, because he did a great investigation that ultimately led to his conviction. But what I bring him up because if you get arrested for DUI, you have the right to refuse to take a breath test. You do. But if you cause a serious bodily injury or you kill somebody, we're going to politely ask for a sample of your blood, and if you refuse, we're going to hold you down and take it, and we're going to get a warrant. So if you kill somebody under the influence or cause a serious bodily injury crash, where you maim somebody, we're going to forcibly take your blood from you and use it against you. So there will be no refusal in our state. Mr. Goodman, like I said, he had over $400 million. He had the best legal team. If anybody had the economic wherewithal to beat the rap on the DUI, it would have been him. Now, does anybody know who Scott Wilson is? That's right. No, everybody knows about Mr. Goodman. Nobody knows about 23-year-old Scott Wilson, who was killed needlessly. This is the blood draw kit that will take your blood with. And these are the animations that were, I believe, were done by Investigator Snellgrove. Investigator Snellgrove is going to talk in greater detail about these if you ask him. But there's Mr. Goodman's car, and then he crashes into Mr. Wilson's car. Now, I'm going to ask Investigator Snellgrove, please correct me if I'm wrong on this, but he was alive after the crash, is that correct? Investigator Snellgrove? What's that?
He was unconscious.
He was alive. And I believe because of the autopsy, they found water in his lungs, is that correct? Yeah. So essentially what Mr. Goodman did is he did a Chappaquiddick. He sat there, crashed into this young man, pushed him into a canal that I believe was approximately 4 feet of water, and instead of helping him, ran away. And Investigator Snellgrove will tell you how that they did a 2-station diagram of this crash scene. They downloaded the black boxes of both vehicles. And they made these animations, which I believe, honestly, this is what convicted him in the jury's eyes. Because when he said he didn't know he hit this kid, this is the viewpoint from Mr. Goodman's car. And this is the viewpoint from Mr. Wilson's car. And this young man drowned in 4 feet of water. We don't want to hold you all day. We do want to get you that panel. But if you have any questions about that, Investigator Snellgrove and Investigator Stefan were on that case. They're the best vehicle homicide investigators in this county, as far as I'm concerned. Please ask them questions about that. This basically just talks about that DUI is both alcohol and drugs. Legalization of marijuana, huge problem. Basically what happened in Colorado is in all likelihood probably going to happen in the state of Florida. And at the end of the day, it's not working out well. They had an increase in deaths, they've had an increase in crashes. 57% of the people, they reported using marijuana within 2 hours, so the chances are that it's psychoactive, it's in their system. And think about it, that's self-reporting. That's people that were honest enough to tell you. How many people were honest in the survey? The problem, like I told you earlier, we have no non-invasive, there's no breath test for marijuana. There's no non-invasive testing. And we have no per se legal limit. These devices are still in the testing and evaluation stage. None of them are approved for in the state of Florida. Anybody who works for the government, it's a long time to get something approved for use per Florida Administrative Code. And people say they're going to tax it, but it was only 0.9% of Colorado's budget. And their violent crimes went way up. All right, I'm going to show one more video, and we're talking about the texting law, and then we'll start our panel. But this is me in my patrol car. I'm heading northbound on Australian Avenue up Belvedere. It's getting toward the end of my shift. And someone rear-ended me. This is me on the side of the road. Watch the tractor trailer here. They were too busy looking at my blue lights and not paying attention to each other. Think about what would have happened if it happened a second earlier, right up against that tractor trailer. I'm heading home from work again, Donald Ross, eastbound. And a young woman that's going to college rear-ended me. I have to set this one up a little bit for you. I was assigned to I-95 for approximately 11 years. This is I-95 northbound during rush hour by Woolbright Road, where it's a blind curve. I pulled this young lady over for a traffic violation, and she was so upset, in order to spite me, she pulled out doing 20 miles per hour during rush hour on a blind curve, where you can't see behind me. wish I could have found the gentleman. I wish I could have found the gentleman who was driving behind her. He was driving. He was at the 10 and the 2. He drove like I wish I could give him a medal. I wish I could have pulled him over and stopped him and told him how good he was doing, but I had to pull her over again. Think about it. That talks about the move over law. The move over law is not just for us, it's for you. If that person did anything else but driving, he would have rear-ended me or he would have rear-ended her. Think about it. People do silly things when they get pulled over by the police. They're distracted, they're not thinking. That was pretty bad. I'm going to wrap this up talking about the texting law. It just came out. There's 2 different statutes. Any questions before I go into it? Okay. There's 2 statutes. There's 316.305, subsection 3A is the enforceable, and 316.306, subsection 3A, which is the enforceable side. 305 is the no texting law, and 306 is the hands-free law for the school zones and construction zones. They're very similar. The only difference is, at face value, the texting law, if you're manipulating the phone multiple times texting, you get pulled over by a police officer, it's going to be a $116 non-moving violation in Palm Beach County. If you're caught a second time within 5 years, it becomes a $166 3-point moving violation in Palm Beach County. Now, that is the texting while driving law for all roadways in Florida. Now, the one that's specifically for construction zones and for school zones is 316.306. That's hands-free, so you're not allowed to be holding onto your phone and driving through a school zone. If you get stopped by a police officer, that will immediately be a moving violation. 3 points and a $166 fine. They could be a little confusing, but do you have any questions about that? Okay. Yes, sir.
Corporal, just for statistical purposes, since the law went into effect on January 1st, can you give us some data on citations that are written in Palm Beach County? Or
Yes, this law is being enforced very cautiously. If you read the statute, and I challenge all of you to hop on your smartphones, Google 316.305 and 316.306. There are numerous exemptions to where if you're using your navigational tools, if you're using your phone, there's many exemptions in this law that make it very difficult to enforce. So to answer your question, it's being enforced very, very cautiously. It is being enforced in our county, it is being enforced by our agency, but when a police officer asks me about it, I say use an abundance of caution, be incredibly familiar with the law, know all the exemptions, and if there's a 1% doubt in your mind, or whether or not they fall into the exemption, give a written warning. Because right now, the way the law is written, it's not ideal, but I feel it's a very good step in the right direction. And the people that were involved in this law were the same people that were involved in making seatbelts a primary stop. Does anybody remember that? In 2010, before that time, seatbelts were not a primary stop. And the people that made seatbelts a primary stop, some of these legislatures are in the room, did an excellent job. The way they did it was Mr. Slosberg, as well as other very good legislatures, they initially made a primary stop for small children, and then they slowly, incrementally removed the exemptions. And in all honesty, I feel that might be the way it might go. They'll slowly manipulate the law until it becomes an easier law for law enforcement to enforce. My honest assessment is it's 100% a step in the right direction. It is incredibly needed. We don't even have accurate stats about crashes and texting because nobody tells a cop after they get into a crash, I was texting. They're just not going to tell us that. There are a few people that will be honest, but very honestly, I'm going to say it is as bad as driving under the influence at this point. And all we have to do is be stopped at a stoplight with 50 cars ahead of us, and the light turns green, and we know everybody that was texting because there's brakes in the snake. We know who's playing with their technology and who is not. And when the cars are in motion, they're continuing to play with their technology. It is incredibly dangerous. And on that point, also your vehicle must be in motion in order to be enforced for the texting law. Either the regular one for texting or the school zone and the construction zone. And for construction workers must be present. Are there any other questions about the law, please? Okay. With that said, Mr. Slosberg, let me turn over to you.
Yeah, sure.
And thank you all very much for your time. If you have any questions for me, please contact
Let me introduce the panel. You know, of course, Mr. Slosberg. Also would like to introduce Jason Karlecki.
Yes, sir.
Deputy Karlecki. And then the 2 deputies who were mentioned previously in the previous segment about the John Goodman trial and the investigation with John Goodman that so many of us followed so closely.
Gosh. Deputy Silvero.
Robert Steffen.
And Deputy Steffen. I'm glad I got your names. A couple of your coworkers, Stefan and Steffen, so now we've got Steffen. Good to have you here, all of you. Let's just get a robust discussion going with these questions. I may throw it to somebody first, but then anybody just jump in and follow up if we would. Would that be all right? And then anybody else, as I mentioned before, if you've got a follow-up, get your hand up. I'll get over there with the mic, and you can ask it. So let's start with our first question. How does law enforcement enforce something we just talked about in this previous segment, the new texting and driving law? Why don't we start at the very end? Grab the mic and let's go.
Like I previously said, very cautiously. Is the law ideal? I would like to see some changes, but it's a step in the right direction. But when I tell police officers, they ask me questions, the best way to enforce it, make sure you have a clear line of sight on the vehicle, make sure you see multiple inputs into the device, and follow the statute to the letter. The statute is very specific in the language. It specifically tells you to notify the person you stop that they do not have to show you their technology if they don't wish to. I tell them, make sure you adhere to that statute. Ask them if there's any reason. If they give a reason that falls within the exemptions, do not issue a summons or a citation for it.
Thank you. So I have a follow-up myself on this. Do you find that drivers know about the law or aware of it when you stop them? Have you made any stops?
We have.
And are they aware? Do they know they're doing something wrong when they do it? And I don't think your mic's hot either, so go ahead. Thank you.
The persons that I've stopped for not so much texting and driving, but I look for multiple keystrokes at the same time. What are they doing on their devices while they're operating the motor vehicle? And as long as I see that, their attention is taken away from the roadway and drawn to their device, I'll stop them, ask them why they were utilizing their device. And I have had, most people are fairly honest. They'll tell you either I was texting, or the people that know about the law will tell you they knew it went into effect. However, texting is more important to them, and they're not going to stop.
So
And I think
basically, let's go through the basic terms again. The next question, I know we discussed it in the segment, but if you just want to lay it out real quickly again, just to follow up.
so. What I'm looking for is, obviously, they're utilizing their device while they're driving. Once the stop is made, you contact that person, ask them what they're doing. If they say that they're texting, then obviously you've met your burden. If not, you advise them that they have the right not to show you their phone. However, you'd like to look at that, look through it and see if there was texting. If there was, you have to prove that it was at the time they were driving. So look at a timestamp on the phone and confirm that with the time that you did the traffic stop.
Okay. Our next question has to do with we see the billboards all the time, the ticket clinics and attorneys who will get you out of the ticket. Explain, if someone receives a ticket, would you please explain how businesses like the ticket clinic keep the driver from accumulating points and insurance increases? Deputy Sondra, would you like to take it?
Sure. So what we see typically when we issue any citation, not just the texting and driving citations, but any citation, it's easy for someone, obviously a citation is supposed to be inconvenient for the driver, whether they pay the citation monetarily or they have to take time off work to go to court or whatever. Well, if they hire one of the ticket clinic attorneys, they pay them a certain amount, they go to court for them so they don't have to take time off of work. Typically with those services, if they don't win the case, they don't have to pay the attorney. But most of the time when these attorneys go into court, they'll take 40 or 50 cases at a time, and they'll try to plead them out with the magistrate. If they plead them out with the magistrate, typically they'll ask for no points. If they get no points, then they won't have anything on their license for the insurance company to ding them on. So they may pay a small fine, and then they have to pay the attorney, but it doesn't go against their driver's license at all.
And a follow-up?
Well, the truth be told, all they need to do is a 4-hour BVI class, and they could accomplish the same thing without paying the attorney.
Sure, but now it takes the time away from them. If they pay an attorney, the attorney takes care of everything, and some people's time is worth the money is worth more than their time.
And 90% of the people who do the ticket clinic still have to do the driving school.
I
It's a little asterisk that has to go along with it, that's viewable on all of those.
Well, not only that, I've seen more times than not where the hearing officer is inclined to issue points, and the attorney, to get paid, will say, well, how about you don't give points, and instead of a 4-hour driving school, you do a 12-hour in-person driving school and make them write an essay. So they'll increase the fine, increase the driving school portion, all in lieu of getting points so that they get paid.
But they save time.
Thanks for the follow-up. That was good discussion. We have quite a few questions about texting and driving, but I think so we can cover a variety of topics. I am going to go to different topics. So rather than keep everything together, we can get some of the questions that you're asking right now, and we'll go back to texting and driving and some of the consequences in just a couple of minutes. I know that in the 80s, this is the next question, drinking and driving was almost a status symbol. Do you see a change in the way society views drinking and driving? Also, with the advent of Uber and Lyft, has there been an overall decline in convictions of DUI? I don't want to keep going up and down the road here, but we'll do that right now. So go ahead, Deputy Pelican.
The first part of the question was,
Status.
Oh, I know in the 80s, drinking and driving was almost a status symbol. Do you see a change in the way society views drinking and driving? You answer that one, then we'll go to...
Yeah, honestly, Lyft, Uber, that actually has helped tremendously. And majority of the young people, they actually pay closer attention. They actually pay more attention now than older generations. But then again, on the other side of the coin, I've had my mother-in-law, she knows how to use Uber. Uber and Lyft have helped out a lot. Has it become more of a crime in people's eyes? Yes, but not nearly enough, unfortunately. I think it wasn't taken as seriously as it should have been back in the 80s, but now the penalties have definitely caught up to the severity of the crime.
So I think there's been a lot of changes since I was a DUI enforcement officer before I became a traffic homicide investigator back in the early 90s. And, back in the 90s, it was typically all alcohol. That's all we saw was alcohol DUIs. Leading up into probably the beginning of the 2000s, we went to all the poly drug use, which you had a lot of, the people were doing the Red Bull and alcohol and drugs and everything together. And now we're seeing that probably a large percentage, maybe 30% now, is all drug related. We have no alcohol at all involved. So there's been a big change since the early 90s is when I began doing it, leading up until now on DUI in general. But I think to add to what Jason said, the Uber and Lyft is definitely helping. However, a lot of the drug use that we see and a lot in the alcohol use also is that they're past that point. If they don't have the Uber already set up before they leave where they're going, they make that bad decision to drive because you're impaired. So I think the people who, and I also agree with what Jason said also about, you see the people who they buy tickets to a concert or they buy, or they're going to a bachelor party or whatever, and they automatically order the Lyft then to go there. Well, once they do that, of course, now they have a ride home. They don't have a way to drive home. So that's helping out. But as far as driving there and then making the decision that now I'm impaired, I should probably get a ride home, I think there's issues with that, with the intoxication and the impairment.
Well, so Deputy Stephan, which is scarier to you, the DUIs or the impairment on the roads from drugs or alcohol?
I think that, I concur. I think the alcohol consumption, we've done such a great job over the last 15 years with the whole drinking and driving campaigns that it really has helped, and the number of alcohol-specific cases has gone way down. Now with the poly drug use, it gets to be much more difficult for us because with an alcohol case, or you can say at a 0.08 alcohol level, they're presumed impaired by law. Now you can have people that have some drug levels of depressants and so on in their system that would be enough to kill one adult. It's barely enough to be a therapeutic level for another adult because they've been using it for so long and
their system is accustomed to it. So it makes it much more difficult for us in law enforcement to go into court and say they were impaired by that. And not only that, our toxicologists are unable to come into court to say at this specific level of drug, it's going to impair the person. It's harder to get convictions and charge people with more serious crimes.
First, we'll start with the drug use. What really happened here is this made, once recreational marijuana is right around the corner in Florida. It's medical marijuana right now, recreational is around the corner. And so what is happening right now is it made law enforcement's job a lot harder. And with alcohol, it's 0.08. You put her or him on the breathalyzer, and the number's the number. However, when you're talking about drug-related or marijuana, law enforcement has to practically be an attorney in court defending their position. So not only do they have to be law enforcement, but they have to be attorneys. And so it's harder and harder to prove your case against high-powered attorneys who are paid $1,000, $2,000, whatever it takes. So it gets more and more difficult. And as far as the texting and driving issue, I don't think that really the public at large understands what it is to make a law. And let me explain to you about road safety laws. Well, road safety laws are grand slam home runs, because usually when a politician goes and passes a law, it only affects a certain segment of the population. But when you're talking about road safety laws, that affects 500 million people. I mean, this is huge. So when you have a law that affects 500 million people, the Florida politicians that run stuff, you know, you gotta go slow. From my perspective, how I got stuff done is being persistent and persuasive and patient. And a perfect example, when you talk about the seatbelt law, that was named after my daughter Dory. Both of the laws were. But the first law was for minors. Okay, so like, do you think that I didn't think that how can these men and women from law enforcement assess who's a minor? It's impossible. It's very, very difficult. And so I took a step in the right direction by passing the seatbelt law for minors, which is named the Dory Slosberg seatbelt law. And the real reason, no one would believe the reason, but the real reason was one powerful senator weighed 375 pounds, and he wouldn't let me pass this seatbelt law. He stopped it. However, he said, Irv, he says, you know what? Dory's up there in heaven smiling down at you. I'm not going to wear my seatbelt, but I'm going to give it to you for minors. So that's what happened. And then the next step, 6 years later, it passed. I mean, it just took, and the reason it passed is he died. And, you know, it's just unbelievable, but that's how it goes with road safety law. So let's go forward in the no texting law. I had it for 5 years. I tried to make every deal possible, couldn't do it. My daughter took over my spot. She had it for a year. She drove around to maybe 8 or 9 different counties, 10 counties throughout the state, and a lot of cities, and got the community to okay it, county commissioners, city commissioners, counties and cities. And then finally, last year, she passed it. And it wasn't what she wanted or what I wanted. It was a negotiation between all of us to get something done so that we can say to law enforcement, okay, we put something on the books. And so what's going to happen next year is it's going to pass for everyone. Because a couple of powerful politicians say, hey, Irv, wait till I'm done. Go tell Emily, when I'm done, we'll pass it. I mean, it's hard to believe stuff like this happens, but this is it. This is what, so next year, it's going to be hands-free. Right now, this year, it's hands-free in school zones, hands-free in construction zone, and then it's law enforcement can't ask for your phone. And you could say that you're using your GPS. And that's what the law is right now. So there's a lot of loopholes in the law, but you know what? At least we put it on the books. And at least we could say it's illegal to text and drive. And it's got to be hands-free in construction zones, in school zones. And next year, it's going to change. It's going to be upgraded.
So I wanted to ask you,
Yeah.
because of the tragic loss you experienced, when you see teenagers today walking, and they walk like this, do you think they're getting it about driving and not texting?
You know, Roxanne, I was at Starbucks yesterday morning, and I was just amazed that, you know, I was just backing out of my spot on Yamato and Congress in the parking lot, and, you know, everything was fine. And then I see some girl, young girl, maybe 16, 17. She was just walking in front of my car and texting. I mean, just walking in front of my car. She didn't even look.
Okay, so I think that's the answer. I had it the other night going into Village Hall in Wellington. I didn't even tell my husband yet. A kid's texting on a skateboard. It came right in front of my car. Oh, yeah. Ooh, I jumped a birthday or two on that one. That scared daylights out of me. At this point, you know, I don't want to have that happen at this point.
Roxanne, it's not only are they drinking and driving, they're drinking, texting, and driving.
Or skateboarding.
Whatever, skateboarding, yeah.
Right? All right, Mr. Slosberg, I'm going to ask you, is texting and driving as dangerous as drinking and driving?
Well, I'm not a real techie person. I don't like Facebook and all that stuff anyway, so I try to stay off my phone as much as I can. But it's hard to discern, especially at night, late at night, when we're out on our way home from a case or out doing an event or something like that. And the cars are all over the road in front of you, and you can pull up kind of next to them just to kind of look in the car to see that glow before you pull them over, because you don't know if they're drunk or what the situation is. And every single person's on their phone. I can see them driving with their knees and using both hands to text. And so I believe it may even be worse in some situations, because somebody who's impaired and maybe knows they're impaired are going to focus as hard as they can on the road. We talk about alcohol. You know, alcohol, a lot of times you don't even know you're impaired. You kind of leave where you are and you're okay, and then you get halfway home and you're like, oh my God, I don't feel good. But when you get into the marijuana, we talk about the marijuana individuals, when they know they're impaired, they know they're high, and they get tunnel vision and they focus on the two lanes ahead of them and they don't focus anywhere else. But they are hyper-focused on the road. But somebody who's texting, they can drive all the way home from work and don't remember what roads they took to get home. And so I believe that it is, or might even be worse than an alcohol or drug impaired driver, especially somebody who does it all the time.
You said you're not a techie, but the next question, so one of you can say, raise your hand, you want to take the mic on it. Is there anything in phone settings to silence texting notifications until the car is not moving?
Yes, absolutely. On your Apple iPhones, they have a feature called Do Not Disturb. And when it senses that the phone is being moved rapidly in a vehicle, it turns off texting, everything that you could possibly distract you. There's also apps on the App Store. There's numerous apps. I don't want to endorse a specific one, but there's also apps for Android and all the other major cell phones. there's technology is absolutely there, and I think that's probably going to be in the short term, that is the answer for younger drivers, or maybe less disciplined drivers, but ultimately, it's a lesson they got to learn, not to play with their technology when they're driving.
Sadly, the lesson's a little slow in being learned, isn't it? You've been trying to teach it, it's just not being learned as quickly as perhaps it should be, or should be definitely. Explain how citations added points, explain how citations and points on a driver's license and consequences of accumulating points. Citations and points on a driver's license and consequences of accumulating points. Does that make?
Sure.
Okay, good.
So obviously, we have two types of violations. If we talk about the texting law, first violation is a non-moving violation, which means it's going to be lesser of a fine, $116. Part of that's going to be the fine, $30, and the other is going to be court costs. A second or subsequent violation moves it up to a moving violation, which increases the fine to $60 and more of a court costs, $116 for a $166 ticket in that area, and then you get 3 points on your license. A given amount of points within a given time period will suspend your license, and obviously, if that doesn't work, an even greater number of points over a given time will revoke a person's driver's license. So it's an increased penalty the more you're caught doing something.
Investigator Stefan is 100% correct. The last time we checked, it was 12 points within 12 months, you're suspended. 18 points within 18 months, you're suspended, and 24 points within 24 months, you're suspended. But that's how the point system is currently working in the state of Florida. What I do not know is the exact time frame they drop off your license, but if you go to DHSMV's website, they should have that.
So, you're talking about the penalties, but what are the challenges that you have of enforcing these laws?
The biggest problem is the magistrates are doing adjudication withheld. When you get an adjudication withheld, no points are assessed to your license. The fine amount is there, but the points are not there. When a traffic magistrate does adjudication withheld, you're basically usurping the system of points. The point system was meant to where if you have X amount of citations, you're going to lose your license. But if you're very well off and you don't mind spending money, if you keep getting adjudication withheld, you consider speeding as it's an extra tax, a ticket, unless you add the points. And the problem is the adjudication withheld is far too prevalent. There's many times where I've issued citations, and when I look at the driving record before I go to court, I'll see 3 adjudication withheld for speeding within a year's time. And without those points, the license will never get suspended for the point system. So seeing adjudication withheld not used so prevalently would be the ideal situation.
So I worked a case last year. It happened the year before. We finished the case up last year. We had an individual who ran through a stop sign, T-boned another vehicle and killed the girl who was in the vehicle. When we were doing our research on this individual, he was 17. He was 17 years old, had 22 speeding tickets already. His dad had bought him a Audi R8 to drive as his vehicle. He had some citations that were over 108, 110 miles an hour. Because the family was well off and they hired an attorney every time, he had 22 adjudications withheld. So, like Jason was saying, there's no discipline for him. And speaking with the victim's family, the dad and mom, they were very angry. They were angry at law enforcement and trying to explain to them that we're writing the tickets, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. But the court system's failing them by allowing them to have the points taken off his license. So to him, and he's not even paying monetarily because his parents are paying the tickets and the attorneys. So in essence, as a juvenile, he doesn't understand. He just speeds, gets a ticket, and it's taken care of. So now he has hit and killed somebody, and he was charged with a citation of driving or running a stop sign. There was no speed involved in this crash. However, he was charged with, when we work fatalities cases and they're charged with citations, it has to go in front of a judge. So this is the first time it actually went in front of a judge and not a magistrate. The judge saw all the citations that he had before, and she suspended his license for 15 years, which is difficult for him, and I see it from both sides, because he was never taught by the court system that he did something wrong. But now he loses his license for 15 years, so he doesn't ever really get to be a functional person. He can't go to work, he can't drive to work, and I understand why that was done, but I think the court system not only failed the victim in this case, it failed the defendant also, because there was no repercussions for him at all.
Should take the parents' license away too.
Is there a push, or do you think there should be a push for a ceiling on adjudication, 3 in 3 years kind of thing? Or is that even possible?
I don't know the answer to that, and you know, the father was extremely angry even when we came out of court, because all he got was a ticket in his mind. And I explained to him that you need to go fight those laws and try to get something passed to say that, okay, enough is enough. 3 tickets, you got off on 3 tickets, you can't do it anymore, like you said.
Well, is this a big enough problem to bring awareness to some kind of a ceiling on it?
Absolutely.
Where it's like 22 is a ridiculous number.
Absolutely.
That's just a ridiculous number.
And this is not just, this is one incident. There's thousands of people like this out there. And this kid's 17 years old, he's only been driving for a year.
So, go ahead, sir.
Couldn't that almost fall under child neglect on the father's part? And child endangerment?
That's a DCF issue.
Allowing that to happen and
I don't know the answer to that.
I know, I mean, it just seems that
The court,
should be on the father.
the court system should be handling it the correct way, and they're not. Because it's all about him hiring an attorney that's taking care of it. You know, I like your suggestion. You know, you get 3 tickets and you only get 3 times in your lifetime that you can have adjudication withheld.
Right, I mean, if it's manslaughter, vehicular manslaughter with DUI, there's minimum sentencing. I mean, we heard that on the panel today. I mean, you're going to pay something.
Well, the largest problem with traffic citations is no one ever wants to get involved in traffic citations. The state attorney's office can't handle traffic citations. They have nothing to do with it. Even in our fatality cases, if we issue a citation in a case like this, we have no representation from anyone from the state. We have to act as the state attorney. The only person that can get involved is the general attorney's office, and they won't. So it's just this monster in itself that nobody wants to delve into. You know, and you know, I believe that maybe it wouldn't have changed anything if they suspended his license after 12 points. Maybe he still would be driving that way, but at least something is being done to him that if he gets stopped again, he goes to jail this time. You know, maybe a light bulb would go off to say, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. But in his mind, he gets a speeding ticket, somebody pays it, and nothing happens. He just gets to go out and drive again.
So we're talking about law, so let's transition then back to Herb about the possibility of something like that happening in Tallahassee.
Okay, well, Tallahassee is full of a bunch of people fighting. And what they're fighting for is money. And in this kind of case, you can imagine how many different parties are involved in trying to get people adjudicated for things that they did. And they're just figuring a way to make money on it. And so it's a big food fight. So what did I do? 3 million tickets are given every year. And so what I did was I said, okay, let all you guys fight over the money. I'm going to tack on $5 on a traffic ticket, and this money is going to go directly to driver education. And that's why we're here today. Otherwise, there would be no driver education. And so far, the schools, none of it goes to me, none of it goes to my foundation. You know, like the schools so far, the Dory Slosberg Driver Safety Education Act has generated $55 million for driver education. And so while all these people are fighting over it, I made sure you guys got a job. And besides that, the kids are getting driver education. And you know what the best thing about it is? It's free. It's free. And no other state, you know, I tried to convince other states to do this, but it's very hard to be sneaky. being a politician, you know, even though, you know, like, it's sort of sneaky. But what I did was, I tacked this onto an amendment where nobody could see it. I did it in the dark. And no, this is what you gotta do. I tacked it onto an amendment on a transportation bill with 98 pages, and no one saw it. However, I had to have the okay from the governor, the Speaker of the House, and the President of the Senate. And so I told them, hey, I'm only gonna do it in Palm Beach and Broward County. And they believed it. Meanwhile, 10 years, myself and Emily, we drove around to the entire state, and we got it enacted in 57 counties. So I don't know what everybody else was fighting. While they're fighting, I was sneaking on some kind of amendment that nobody saw. It's real dark. Nobody saw what was going on, and it worked. And you know what? 2 years ago, I tried to add another $2. I got foolish, though. I didn't think that I would have to do this at the last second because I got the okay from the Speaker, President, and the Governor. A reporter busted me. And the reporter said to the Republicans who were running stuff, how could you let Herb Slosberg raise taxes on an election year? And so then they took down the Speaker of the House, and it was almost passed, and the Speaker of the House said to me, go to the showers, Herb, it's over. You can't get another $2. This guy, Gary Fineout from I think he was from Jacksonville. Anyways, he's a reporter. He busted it, and so they said this is like raising taxes and you can't do it. So I don't know what everybody else is doing. I only know what I was doing, because it's very difficult to, no matter how much power you have in Tallahassee, it's just so difficult to make changes. They come very slowly.
The wheels turn slowly.
Slowly.
We have 2 minutes left. Anybody want to add anything, ask a question, add a comment before we wrap it up? Because I want to ask each deputy just for some couple of 30 seconds of final thoughts, what you would say if you could talk to the teenagers right now, or what you would talk about, say to parents. I mean, you've seen the worst of the worst, and the experiences and how to change, perhaps implement change with drivers today.
I'll give, I've been doing vehicle homicide investigations for 14 years. I've seen a lot of tragedy in my days, and had to tell far too many family members that they've lost a loved one. So that just, what I try to tell children now when I go and speak in schools is the ramifications of their actions, and how it's not only going to hurt them, but it's going to hurt their friends, the kids in school, their families, not only their families, but the families of the victims, friends of the victims. It truly affects the community. And if we can somehow stop that, we all benefit. To add to what Troy said, I stopped a young man on Okeechobee Boulevard in West Palm. I was in a marked patrol car doing 50 miles an hour, and he blew by me doing 110 with 3 other kids in the car at 1 o'clock in the morning. It wasn't the first time he'd been stopped, and I sat with him on the side of the road, waited for his dad to get there, and spoke with him and told him if he continued to drive like that, he was going to kill someone. Had a heart-to-heart with him, and a year and a half later, we worked a fatal where he killed somebody, because nobody took responsibility in his family. So, like we said before, can you lay that on the parents? I think to some extent, but to some extent we're raising our children as well for them to make their own decisions. And we have to, they have to be responsible for their actions as well. I don't know the answer to that, only that it really affects the whole community.
Well, I'm like Rob. I've been doing fatalities also for 18 years, and worked a lot of big cases, worked a lot of cases with young kids. And I agree, it affects everyone in the community. I mean, you look at what happens when a teenager gets killed. The school is just devastated. The community is devastated. Nobody wants to see a teenager that makes a bad decision like that. And what's tough in our our cases, unlike gang-related crime and property crime and all that, we deal with, most of the time, really good people who make bad choices. And it's difficult to see how it destroys everyone. And I agree with what he says. One of the things that I can say out here is I have 6 children, and I have 2 that are older that are driving. I have 2 that are coming up into driving age, and I think we all as parents can teach them how to drive, but we also have to teach them to be responsible, to not make bad decisions. My 2 older children, it was very aggravating to me when they started driving, because if I needed something from them or I needed to get a hold of them while they were driving, they wouldn't touch their phones, which is a great thing. It's a frustrating thing, but it's a great thing. And that's something that we instilled in them. I mean, I take my kids out to our impound lot and show them the cars. They know what I do. I get very unusual questions from my children when I get called out. But they understand, I think, a little more the decision-making part, not just the driving part. I think, like I said, we all can teach them driving, repetition, and that. But as far as making decisions, not packing the car full of kids and driving as fast as you can to the restaurant. I know we worked a case, was it about a year ago, where the kids, prom night, they all, after prom, went to the hotel, decided they wanted to go to Steak and Shake, and they wanted to see who could get there first. They lost control of the car. One of the kids lost control of the car. His uncle let him borrow his, was like an M5 BMW, and he was going about 103. Lost control, hit a tree, killed his girlfriend who he took to the prom, and he was ejected from the car and ran home with 2 broken legs to tell his sister what happened when he came back. But one of our DUI units had stopped 2 of the other kids on 441 racing at the exact same time that the crash happened. So I think just talking to them about making good decisions, I think, is the most important thing with the teenagers.
Thank you, Deputy Clean. Final thoughts?
Final thoughts, you're all driving instructors. Be as honest as you possibly can. It's tough to be politically correct and honest at times, and I understand that. For 22 years, you try to be honest with people, but you don't want to offend anybody. But especially when it comes to your immediate family, where you get to set the tone, you love your children, be honest with them. Tell them exactly what the consequences are. A very good friend of mine's daughter was getting ready to drive. I had one of the vehicle homicide investigators take that young lady on a tour of the wreck yard, where every single vehicle fatality was involved, where the cars are absolutely mangled, to show the blood stains on the vehicles, because it is real. It happens, but until you see it, or until it touches you, it's not real. Be as honest as you possibly can. Within the confines of, your job, you have to adhere to certain rules, but be honest and upfront and as passionate as you possibly can. Sell the product, which is ultimately going to keep them alive as best you can. And in your own personal lives, be as honest and upfront about the problem. Don't sugarcoat anything. I mean, we all love our children, we want to protect them from the world, but don't sugarcoat them from the things that are out there and not warn them. Be honest and upfront as you possibly can.
Mr. Slosberg?
Thanks, Roxy. When parents are sending their kids to school, they're only thinking about what kind of college they're going to go to. This college, that college, what's their SAT score? They're not thinking about what we do. However, we understand that what good is an education if our kids are dead? And you have to take the other side of it when you go to vote. Well, people are voting for education, for healthcare, for jobs, for social issues. No one's going to vote on road safety. They just take it for granted the people, the voters, or everybody in the community, they just take it for granted that their kids are gonna come home and go safely to school. And so we have a job that, you know, is not thought too highly of. You know, because of unless something happens to them or something happens in their school, then all of a sudden it goes to the top of the charts for a while. And so we have to realize job's a difficult job. And I guess Team Dory, which is Rich, Shay, where's Shay? He's out there working. And Ed is Emily's legislative assistant, and Irv, we are focused on road safety. And so, believe me, we're fighting every day, whether it's Emily is working legislatively, or me working in the foundation, or all of you here that are sitting in the room, including people who aren't sitting in the room, like Sheriff Bradshaw and Chief Kutzero and all of the law enforcement who's here. I mean, we're a team, and thank God that the state of Florida has us on the team. The deputies, the sheriff, the law. Shay, I just gave you a shout out back there. And you know, we're a team, and everybody in this room is so important. And the point man of the sheriff, Kevin, stand up, Kevin. We organized this with Kevin and all of his men and women, and Chief Kutzero and the Major, even though they're not here, they're here in spirit. And everyone who's here, I just want to thank you for participating. And thanks for making a difference and changing the world, because that's what we're doing. We're changing the world as a team. And I really want to thank everyone for coming. Well, that's the end.